listener production.
I'm automotive commentator and journalist Greg Rust, and this is Rusty's Garage. This episode is about a lifelong quest to be the fastest Aussie on Earth. Rosco McGlashan is a bit of a legend, very proud of his West Australian roots, and that's in fact where we find him for this chat, at the Perth workshop where his very dedicated team are helping to shape what is effectively a rocket on wheels, a horizontal-looking missile called Aussie Invader 5R, designed to do 1,000 mile an hour. That's 1,600 kilometres an hour and never leave terra firma. It's an incredible feat of engineering that in many ways is groundbreaking because it asks a huge amount of the componentry. Some clever people have worked on this project, but really only a land speed record attempt will confirm the simulations, and if it can withstand the rigours of going where no human being on Earth has gone before. In automotive and racing terms, it's a bit like being the first to summit Mount Everest. Rosco is a straight shooter, as ochre as they come, and even at 70 years of age, his insatiable desire to just go fast burns like a never-ending supply of that special rocket fuel mix he needs. McGlashan discovered his love of machines and speed very early on in life, and it became an obsession.
Well, Rusty, it's a pretty long story, mate. I just, in saying this, I've just celebrated my 35th birthday twice. So it wasn't until last week I looked back. I was like, God, I'm bloody 70, and I've got no perception of time, mate. So, but anyway, going back to my young days. So I suppose to start from the beginning, I had born up in Perth in Western Australia, in one of the suburbs, and Mum and Dad had a bit of a fierce relationship, and they were on and off and what have you. So I ended up in a home in Perth. Yeah, we at the school we went to next door. We weren't allowed to kick the footy or play cricket or do anything all the other guys did. So me and my best mate, we started playing our own game. We'd sit down in the dormitory with our backs to the wall and we'd listen to motorcycles, trucks, or cars go past us, and I would say, "Oh, that's a such and such truck." And so no, it's a such and such. And jump up, "Oh, you're right," or whatever. And we're taken with cars and motorcycles and stuff like that at a young age. So at 10 years of age, I was given a job to keep me busy. So I had a job on Saturdays and Sundays cleaning boats. I was cleaning down at the local shipyard because I was a little guy. I could climb inside and clean all the wood boats. I cleaned all the dust and crap out and paint them, whatever. Saved up some money and I was doing pretty good. And then at age 12, I started high school. And started high school, and I was only there for a week, I've got to tell you, but I knew my gazintas, and I knew my gazintas here. I thought I was clever enough to sort of leave, so I had my own car at that time, and I'd driven it to school, but I used to have to hide it around the back of the school. And so as I say, I was there for a week, and I came out one day, and there's the headmaster leaning on the hood of my car, and he said, "McGlashan, you little arsehole." He said, "I might have known this would be yours." He said, "What are you doing with the car at your age?" And whatever. I said, "Well, sir, I worked for it and I bought it and I paid 40 quid for it." And he said, "I'll tell you what to do." He said, "Get your ass in that car." And he said, "If I ever see you in it again, you're going to find yourself in jail." So anyway, and he said, "Besides, that's my parking spot you're in." And anyway, so I headed off into the sunset at age 12 and, ended up out there about 500 mile out of Perth and pulled up somewhere, didn't know where I was going, pulled up and saw some guys putting a tin roof on a big wheat bin and went over and asked if they wanted a hand to get the job done and put the age up to 16, of course. And, went working, but the ambition was always to set a land speed record. And at the same time I left school, I should have mentioned, at the same time I left school, Donald Campbell came across here in 1963 and was running at Lake Eyre, as you may or may not recall, Lake Eyre. And anyway, he's having a lot of troubles with weather and different things. And anyway, I said to my mates at school, I said, "Bloody bombs." I said, "Jesus, what are they doing?" I said, "My car's going to go a heap faster than that." And obviously they all laughed at me at 12 years of age. They all laughed at me. And the bottom line is I've been on the trail of the land speed record ever since.
I love it.
And so it's been one hell of an apprenticeship, Rusty. I've done everything in well, not everything, but just about everything you can possibly do for a backyard guy in motor racing. I've driven rocket funny cars, I've driven rocket go-karts, I've V8 motorcycles, I've speedway vehicles, motorcycles, the works. And anything that had wheels that could go fast, I've had a go at it. And but the land speed thing has always been my ambition, and to me, I've treated the land speed record as an apprenticeship, and to go fast.
Let's talk about some of those other vehicles as we go in the discussion here. I want to come back to that first car. What was it? What was your first car?
It was I've got to get the year right. It was a 54 Custom Line, Ford Custom Line. And I still marvel at it these days. I think the guy must have felt sorry for me. I paid 40 quid for it, and I paid 40 quid for it. I think even in those days it must have been worth a lot more than that, but I really can't recall. But it was a good vehicle. I ended up doing a lot of things with that car. I drove across the Nullarbor when the Nullarbor was shut, and had a lot of fun.
You pointed out your birthday there before. You're like a 25-year-old trapped in a 70-year-old's body, I reckon. That's probably the best way to sum you up. You guys really are, Rosco, like mountain climbers. You're pioneers in so many ways, and I'm really glad that you brought up the likes of Donald Campbell before, and even Sir Malcolm Campbell. Were those guys among those that you looked up to in this quest to be the fastest on land?
I've got to be honest, mate. No, they're not. I always looked at guys. I always looked at Malcolm Campbell, Donald Campbell. Well, obviously Malcolm Campbell. Don't get me wrong, absolute legend. So Malcolm Campbell, absolute legend, and obviously he was a pioneer. When you talk about pioneers, he was a pioneer at the time. Yeah, I look at Pep Donald and people like him, George Easton, the guys like that, money guys that could go out. And a lot like Formula One, I suppose. If you've got the money, you can go and do it. So there's always been three ingredients to set a land speed record. There's the desire. You need a heap of desire. You need a heap of dough, and you need the skill. And we've got two of those ingredients, but we've never ever had any money. But as I say, my heroes, my heroes in the land speed thing are and the land speed record chasers are people like Craig Breedlove, who's a good friend of mine. Craig's still talking about putting another car together, 800-mile-an-hour car together, and he's 70, 76, I think he is now. And Art Arfons is a legend, the junkyard genius in Akron, Ohio. He was a guy that would walk into a junkyard and say, I'll have the front end out of that, and I'll take the back hubs off that, and I'll do this and I'll do that. They come home with a bucket load of shit and bloody put a car together and go fast, very fast. And just an amazing guy. And there's a lot of incredible stories with stuff that Art did, and they're the sort of guys that inspire me. But sadly, I think the thing for us is like people say, well, the land speed record, who really cares these days? You can do that on a computer or whatever, and whether what we're doing is right, wrong, or indifferent, it's just something where, just as I say, it's my lifetime work, my life's work to achieve the impossible. And we already say we've achieved the impossible. We built a car here in this shed, in my home shed, and we went at 638 mile an hour in that back in 2002, which is faster than any car gone in the world. And but we can only do it one way. We had 7 kilometres of water on the track. We couldn't back it up. And I say to people, we've already achieved the impossible, and we're now out to achieve the unthinkable with this new car.
We want to talk about the new car in more detail as we go here in the podcast. Can we pinpoint a couple of key machines along the way for you? One that I did a little bit of homework on, and you might correct me if I don't have this quite right. Let's start with, was it called Crazy Horse, the Chevy V8 powered motorbike, no clutch? Is that true?
Yeah, Well, where that came from, Greg, that was I sort of got around the tracks for a long time. As I say, the ambition was always to set the land speed record, but it wasn't really until I was about 18 that I got invited to join Warner as their manager in Brisbane. So I left Perth and went across there to running their new automatic shop they set up there. And in the throes of being over there, I met one of Brisbane's legends, a guy called Wally Pushki, the Gold Coast Gutsman they call him, and his lovely crew, fantastic crew. And I got to, they asked me if I could hand the crew on the bike. And so we go down to Surfers Paradise, and this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen in drag racing. I kid you not. You see top fuelers, you see all sorts of neat machines. Crazy Horse, to see that ridden by Wally was just something unbelievable. And but the thing with it is no clutch, whatever. And anyway, but the exciting thing with Surfers Paradise was that they used to, when they had a good machine on, it was a really good ploy for the track to sort of stall for time. You could open the gates halfway in the middle of the track, and the pits were sort of at halfway down a quarter mile. Pits were there, and then the good came out, like American imports and stuff like that, or top fuelers they had. They'd say, here they come, they pull them out through that gate and tow them all the way down to the start line under the big tyre at the end, under the big Dunlop tyre, turn around, and then, but it'd stall and just, everyone to get perked up. So, gee, these things all in a minute and whatever. That was really good, but the good thing with the V8 bike was you could you start in the pits and it'll idle at 30 mile an hour, this thing. So you start in the pits, you'd be running ahead, clearing everyone out of the way, but you'd turn the thing out, turn it down towards the bridge, towards the start line, give everyone a wave, and just grab the throttle and blaze the tyre all the way down to the bridge. Not the engine off, kill switch near the throttle, not the kill switch off to pull it up on the engine. There'd be someone down there waiting with a little dolly to go into the back wheel, pull it around, push it into stage, put the stand out in the back, and then we had a guy, Bobby Allsop. He's an absolute trooper. He's not with us any longer, but he's built like Arnold Schwarzenegger, this guy, and he had the job of starting the bike. So back in those days, we didn't have aircraft starters or stuff like that, so we had a bloody common old bloody Ford or something, custom line or something, flywheel with a starter in a cradle. And I'll tell you, man, you put this thing in there, and we had a metal and harmonic balancer that you plug this thing into the metal and harmonic balancer, and they hit it, and you hit the switch. This thing would spin up, and probably as soon as you hit the revs, they go up 6,000-7,000 RPM. And poor old Bob would pull this thing out, and he's fighting the biggest gyro he'd ever seen. This thing bloody doing this, and had a brake on it, had a disc brake on the flywheel to stop the flywheel, but he couldn't activate that till he put it in the back of the truck, and he'd wrestle this thing back in the back of the truck, put it back in there. The car, the start vehicle would back up, and then 3 big revs and rocket off the stand. And Wally is really a master of this. He'd rocket off the stand, back tyre would come past him like a speedway bike, and back tyre would be kissing the armour car on the left-hand side, and this thing would go out and around, and just when you couldn't see anything. Just the whole place is fogged out in rubber, and when you're chasing him, most of these runs are at night time, so when you're chasing him, you couldn't see anything. You couldn't go too fast in the start vehicle because you wouldn't know where it was. It's rubber everywhere. And anyway, just an amazing vehicle. And the thing about Wally is he used to do 9 1-point seconds on it, which was fast for by 170 mile an hour back then. But the bottom line was he's doing half a mile to get there. Where I ran a little bit better ET on it, but I wasn't as brave, so I was running a lot straighter line. So but that was an amazing machine. And as I say, to me, it was the most amazing vehicle I'd ever raced the racetracks in Australia.
And then you build a rocket-powered bike. Is it true they tried to kind of ban it from Australian tracks back then? Is that right?
Yeah, I probably should go back a stage if I can. I really got interested in going faster after the V8 bike. The thing about the V8 bike is when you came off and it used to chase you, and it was bloody scary. So this thing, you'd be sliding down, you'd be sliding on your belly, and then you're rolling the side. I like the F1 motorcycle guys do, but you're sliding all over the place to keep the heat off and we're getting burnt. You'd be sliding down the track at 170 mile an hour, but the bike would be chasing you. And a couple of times I ripped my ear off, a couple of times, smashed my helmet, ripped my ear off with it, and a few things like that. And anyway, I thought I want to make something that goes a lot faster, but it's a lot safer. So a couple of guys I was talking to, they said, well, what are you thinking? I said, a rocket bike. They said, a bloody rocket bike? They never heard of one. Anyway, so at the time I was doing a bit of, I was looking at the rockets and stuff, the rocket funny cars and dragsters in America were running. Anyway, so I started building my own rocket, and I built my own rocket engine. Well, this thing had 2 rockets on it, and built them up. And anyway, set up a test rig in Perth here somewhere, and tried running them on hydrogen peroxide. So these were known as a monopropellant. So they ran the oxidizer with 90% hydrogen peroxide. And so, in other words, that ran by itself. If you blew that into the engine through a catalyst, it self-ignited, it decomposed, made a heap of power. So that's what the rocket cars did at this time. But I had all the NHRA rules and everything on making them, but no one could ever give you the design on an engine. So I did my best to make up an engine. And anyway, to run the bike, I thought I've got to really make this impressive. It's got to put on a good show. I can't be sort of taken down the track when no one's seen a rocket before and be screwing around and say, oh, this didn't work because of that. So I caught up with a good mate of mine. I was flying out to California to meet an absolute legend, Fearless Fred Goski, who was who drove a rocket funny car for the Detroit Mob, actually, as it turned out, the Chicago Patrol. And I didn't know that at the time, but anyway, here's me. So I rocked up at Fred's place in Thousand Oaks in California with the Airways bag with my rocket motor in there, and which I carried on.
You carried it as hand luggage, did you?
Yeah, done that quite a few times back and forwards, and back in the old days. Bottom line was, no one knows what they were or whatever, and so it was no big deal. But anyway, I rocked up at this Fred Goski's place. It was one of the first gated communities in California, and met with Fred. And anyway, around his house, I'll never forget this. The day I died, there's 36 barrels of rocket fuel stored from his front door all the way around the house, round to the back. And I said, they're empty barrels, they're FMC barrels, Fred, they're empty. He said, no, they're all full. He said, I bought them all. And he said, plus I've got another shop and I've got a heap of rocket fuel down there. I thought, God almighty. And anyway, long story there, but bottom line was I showed him a rocket engine. So the next day we got out and after having a couple of beers that night, had a look at my rocket engine. He said, mate, you've done a good job. He said, before we pull it apart, he said, how many screens do you have in your catalyst? And the catalyst is the thing that makes it operate. That's a screen pack inside it. I said, I've got two screens. He said, two? He said, well, what do you expect to do with two screens? I said, well, how many do you run? He said, 100. I said, you're joking. This stuff was $15 a square inch, or where it was in Perth. I thought, oh, God, well, that's the end of the rocket there. But anyway, bottom line was we found out it was wrong with the engine, but while we're there talking, here's the rocket go-kart that I ran was hanging on the roof of his shed. And anyway, I said to Fred, how about we get that down and give it a run? He said, mate, as long as your ass points to the ground, he said, that thing's never come down from the roof. So 2 days later, we had it down on the ground, blew the tyres up. We took it out to a place called Calico Bueco in Northern California and ran it. And the thing I've got to say is, mate, the first time I'd ever sat my ass in a thrust-powered car or thrust-powered vehicle, I thought, mate, why would you screw around with a piston engine? Just straight away, it just made so much sense that to get power, if you want to go fast, you've got to be thrust-powered. And that's my take. And anyway, so we got this thing down, blew the tyres up, 90 psi, the little go-kart tyres, and I was about to climb in the thing. I had to use his fire suit. I never knew I was going to be having a drive, but plus the drivers, everything you got for those rocket cars is Teflon lined. So you've got Teflon lines inside the fire, everything, gloves, helm, goggles, the whole thing's Teflon lined. So I've got all this gear on there, so he's a pretty big guy. So I'm sitting there like a Michelin man sitting in this go-kart. I got the green light. He said, just take your time. Don't worry about trying to bloody ET or anything. Just wait till the tree comes down. Take off when you're right. Light goes green. I'm sitting there and I shoot, nailed it, hit the throttle. And I had never shit myself so much in my life. But the thing before I left the line, the thing that left me alone, really burnt my ass and probably made me so mad was that I had to buy a barrel of this rocket fuel. And back then it was something like $350, which is a lot of money. I think it was for I think 60 gallons. 60 gallons, $350. And anyway, I had to buy that. So anyway, before I even ran it, so I learned how to purge it and all the stuff I had to do with the rocket. But anyway, Fred said to me, I'll give you 10% power. I said, 10% power? I said, what's the point of running the bloody thing with 10% power? And he said, you're getting 10% power. He said, you shouldn't even be in this thing. I've told you the story, you shouldn't be in this thing. He said, there's 2 guys been killed in these previously. He said, the tyres explode when they go too fast and they go under the Armaco and you're dead. He said, 10% power. Anyway, I was feeling it, jeez. So then he walks away, light goes green, I hit the throttle, and holy shit, all I saw him standing at half track was out the corner of my eye. This thing went, sailed past him, quicker than I've ever done anything in my life. Went past there, and this had 2 parachutes on it. Anyway, put both chutes out, turned it round right at the end of the braking area, hit all the dumps on there, had a nose up dump on the front of the car, had all sorts of dumps, about 3 different dumps on it. I dumped everything. He come running down the track. He ran all the way down the edge of the track. He said, you dopey little Aussie bastard. He said, you put two parachutes out, you've dumped the nitrogen, you've done this, you've done that. It's going to take us an hour now to turn this thing around again. My heart's still on this. I said, thank Christ for that.
You broke a record with that go-kart. It sounded like an amazing machine. And the pictures I've seen, were you literally, Roscoe, almost lying down in it, surrounded, weren't you, by what you needed to power that thing?
Yeah, you're sort of lying in the middle of the hole, the guts of the rocket. So, yeah, you've got a nitrogen tank on one side, you've got the hydrogen peroxide tank on the other, and they come together and the nitrogen goes on top of the hydrogen peroxide, and you've got a thing called the dome loader. The more power you want to make, the more pressure you put on top of that oxidizer or that propellant, and to push it in the engine. So the more pressure you put on there. So as I say, we started off with the 10% was 300 psi on this tank. We could have gone to 3,000.
Oh.
Mate, I think it went 3,000 to go to the moon. This thing's a lot of power. It's 2,000 pound thrust engine. So in other words, if you stood on its ass and looked the weight, that's the way to go straight up. So yeah, very powerful machine. But yeah, we end up running at 253 mile an hour. I'm not too good on my kilometres. 253 mile an hour and 5.97, I think, 5.97 second ET.
That is insane, mate. From a go-kart, would you say 253 mile an hour? What are we talking there? We're talking 400 and something Ks, is that right?
Something, yeah. I'm not too good on them, but yeah, over 400 Ks. And but as I say, they do it in a blur, just in an absolute blur, just absolute mind-boggling. And I got to say this before I even went to America, I caught up with. I've got a couple of heroes and a couple of my heroes, and my greatest Australian hero is a guy called Ken Warby, who everyone should know.
Yes,
the fastest man in water in the world, and I ended up driving jet funny cars and jet dragsters and stuff like that. And later, but he's always been a mate of mine. But before I went to America to do this trip, I had my rocket engine in the bag, as I said, in the airways bag, and stopped and had dinner with Ken, and he said, "Why in God's name are you going to America to screw around with rockets?" I said, "Ken, I want to be the fastest guy ever to go down the quarter mile." He said, "Why?" I said, "Because that's drag racing." I said, it's whatever. I want to be the fast. At least be able to say I've been such and such mile an hour down the drag strip. No one's ever got that fast. He said, "Well, who gives a shit?" I said, I do for a start." But he said, "No." He said, "That's not where it's at." He said, "Drag racing, you put on a show." He said, "You're a showman. So it doesn't matter what you're doing." And a lot of the top hill guys and that wouldn't agree. But the bottom line is, if you want to get paid in drag racing, you've got to put on a show. And he said to me, "Why don't you drive one of my jets?" I said, "Oh, Ken, there you go, baby." And he always had an American guy come over and drive the other car, and said, "Oh, mate, it's rockets to me, mate." Anyway, so when I came back and after learning about the price of the screen, I thought, well, there's no one along about 400 screens to put this rocket to make it work. But at the same time, a very good friend of mine was Dennis Sirimus, who was the boss of Andra in Brisbane.
For people that are listening that may not know, Andra, of course, the governing body of drag racing in Australia.
And I was back in Perth, but I contacted Dennis and said, "Mate," I said, "we want to run this thing. I want to take it down the local track and give it a run." And because I bought the go-kart engine back, I actually ended up buying the go-kart. I bought it back and I was going to put the go-kart engine in a bike, which was way too powerful for it, but they didn't know that. But he said to me, "Mate," anyway, so I had the letter hanging on my wall for 1,000 years, where Andrew was telling me all about how dangerous rockets are, and they do this and they do that, whatever. Nothing specific, but just they can accelerate too quick and whatever. And then at the end of the letter, I always laughed. At the end of the letter, it said, "And besides, there's no one in our organisation that knows anything about rockets." Well, geez, it was a great letter. So anyhow, that hung there, but anyway, the bike got hung up, and I think I cut it up one day in a fit of madness and took it all down the tip.
The Guinness World Record for the fastest boat in the world is held by the jet-powered hydroplane Spirit of Australia, which reached an estimated speed of 344.86 miles per hour. Bet the seagulls threw up their chips when that thing went past.
I want to get to, if I can, Rosco, Aussie Invader. When you think about the different iterations, the different cars that you've built along the way, the different versions, this has been a 50-year project, hasn't it? What was the genesis for it? What was the point where you thought, right, I'm going to build Aussie Invader 1, and what was that first mission all about?
Well, there again, as I say, I took the advice from Ken Warby and started looking at jets. I started having a couple of drives in jets, and I did pretty good. First couple on my licensing pass, I actually broke a couple of records at the old Canberra track. running a couple of speed records and stuff like that. But the thing is, to have my own car, I did a deal with Ken that I'd own my own car. I couldn't afford to buy one. But if I went across to Chicago and helped put the chassis and that together for one of the cars, I'd qualify to do that. So I went across to Chicago. I was still pretty young. I was still, I don't know what it was, early 20s, I suppose, and moved into a sleazy motel in South Chicago and worked with a guy called Romeo Palomides, who was a top jet dragster chassis builder. And at that time, the Yanks had built many dragsters, and Romeo had the name at the time as the best. So I went and worked with Romeo, and we put the car together. And 2 years later, I end up owning that car. But absolutely mind-boggling car. That you put it. The beautiful thing about the Aussie 1 car, Aussie 1 and Aussie 4, which I built later, I had the J34 Westinghouse engines in them, and these things were basically bulletproof. They had like what they call stellite turbines in them, so they get the temperature like jet people. I was in a jet the other day with someone jet fighter. And anyway, the bottom line was to go for a start in a Hornet or something like that, and obviously your EGT, your exhaust gas temperature's got to reach a peak. You can't exceed that, or you put the engine in the bin. I said to this guy the other day I was with, I said, the dragsters, when you used to do a 10,000 degree start every time we ran it, and they put out what we call the jet business, the moo carrier, that might have, you're sitting in the car with the engine behind it, holy shit, that's got to blow. And you look at the temperature gauge of the scale, but once it gets the airflow going through it, you see the temperature come back, and we ran these about 650 degrees, something like that, but 6,500 degrees, but they were something else.
Rosco, that's amazing. So you've just detailed a bit about the engine there and how much you love those particular engines. What about the rest of it? What was it? Some of the learnings from your time in America, as far as the chassis build was concerned for Aussie Invader 1. How did that come together? The car.
Well, Aussie 1, as I say, that was built by Romeo, and that was Ken Warby's car. So he owned that car. So that was Aussie 1. But we progressed from there. I thought, well, we'll get a two car team happening. So Aussie 2 was our first land speed car. That was our first land speed car, and that sort of had a square front on it we built, and that's one we set the Aussie land speed record in. But in the meantime, I was making the land speed thing was just was costing a lot of time and every cent we had to sort of keep it going, which it still is with Aussie 5. But I thought to myself, well, we'll build another dragster. So Aussie 4 became a jet dragster, another jet dragster that we raced in Australia, and so we had the two cars side by side, covered a lot of tracks and what have you. But Aussie 1 and Aussie 4 were basically the same cars, same power, same speed.
I want to touch back on Aussie 2 if we can, please, because you brought it up there a moment ago about the 1994 Australian land speed record. That was a very special day, Rosco. How vivid are the recollections from that moment?
Well, that to me was only 2 years ago, mate. So, that was, I still look back on that. And even when we did that then, the same questions people ask me every day, when are you going to be running more? When we built Aussie 2, it was amazing. It was an amazing story. What we wanted to do was put a car together, and there was no information anywhere how you built a land speed car. So I got on very good with Art Arpons, who I mentioned once before, in Akron, Ohio. And I rang Art up one day, and it was even expensive exercise back then to ring someone. Because, you had to go down the phone and use the super glue phone to about ring America and stuff like that. But anyway, I ended up ringing Art, and I said to Art, can you just tell me, mate, we're making a start on this land speed car, and I just want to know, can you just tell me how did you arrive at the specs for your first chassis? I said, I've got a book here. It says it's 22'6" long and it's 8'6" wide. How did you come up with those numbers? And he said, that's the size of the tray on my truck. So I thought, well, that's a good place to start. Rusty. So anyway, so I laid, this is a classic, I laid 4 bits of chromoly tube out on the ground, and on my home shop here, laid them out and said, listen, got a plastic seat, I cut the legs off the seat, said, all right, this is where we'll sit, the engine's got to be here, we'll do this, we'll do that. Anyway, so to get a perspective of the car, I couldn't even afford any more chromoly, so we got a couple of packing boxes and put them up against the rails when we wanted them, tied them on there and set the frame rails up, stuff like that. Anyway, back then, whenever that was, I can't recall what it was, but 20 years ago, 25 years ago, all the TV networks were all fighting with each other to get news. So someone heard a whisper in Channel 7 that we were building a land speed car in Mullaloo. So next thing, the word went around. So I had 4 TV channels out the front of my house. It was bloody embarrassing, I'll tell you, because all they had was 4 bits of tube. And they all come to see the land speed car. And anyway, so I came in there and I put on the bravest face I could and I said, what we're going to do, we're going to get an Australian-built engine. So they're at ATAR, or the Mirage engine, is being built in Fisherman's Bend in Melbourne. I'm going to get my hands on one of them. It's going to have an Australian engine. It's going to have this. Anyway, I put on the best story I could. Anyway, they all said, thanks very much. They went away. I don't even know if the stuff went on there. I can't even remember. But anyway, one of the Channel 7 guys left something left something in the shed. And I went out the car and went out the back of his car to get back to him. And he's saying to his mate, he got his back to us, he said, that guy's got to be the greatest wanker on earth.
But the naysayers have never worried you, Rosco, ever, have they? Ever?
No, and there's still plenty of them around, mate. And but anyway, but building that car was absolute. It was a mega amount of work. It took us 10 years to do it, and I almost never thought we'd get it finished. And the bottom line is using a jet engine. Well, the hardest thing was getting our hands on the jet engine. So we knew what we wanted. We come up with some drawings for how the engine mounts worked and everything like that. We put the chassis together. Being borrowed and stole everything we could do, and stole everything we could do to build the chassis, built a brilliant job on the chassis, engine mounts in there, but we still didn't have an engine. So in the meantime, I'm running my Aussie 1 car around. I'm doing a lot of shows at all the air bases around the country. And anyway, I end up making a really good friend at 77 Squadron in Williamtown. And I said to him, Neil, I've got to have an ATAR engine, an Australian-built ATAR engine. And he said, mate, you'll never see one. You'll never see one. He said, we've got 17 aircraft that have been cannibalised to keep the other ones going. And he said, you'll never get an engine. I said, well, we got the chassis together back in Perth. Before that, I put a show on for all the troops, fired the car up and everything like that. And yeah, they were really impressed with it. And made a lot of friends. And anyway, but he said to me, no, you'll never see an ATAR engine, mate. And I said, well, I've got it. I said, we're back in Perth. I said, we're going to set the land speed record. It's something we're doing for Australia. It's not an ego trip for me or the team. It's just something that's my life's work. We're going to do it. But we need this ATAR engine. He said, mate, I don't mean to disappoint you. I said, no, you haven't disappointed me. I'll give you a ring in a couple of weeks. Just have a look around and see if you can find one. So anyway, this went on and on and on. And probably, I can't remember how long it went on, probably a year. But still we're progressing, making more fuel tanks and everything for the car and whatever. And I come home on one Friday night and the missus said, Neil's just rung you. He just give him a ring. So I rang him up and he said, Rosco, he said, get your ass on a plane tonight. St Mary's Auctions, he said, I'll put 4 engines through the system. He said, these things were whatever. But they're a late entry. No one knows what they are. They're late entry. They've just hit the floor down there. It's a big auction. Get your bum across there. So I got on an airplane. Couldn't even afford an airplane ticket. But anyway, somehow I got to St Mary's and I was crying. I was walking around this auction all day and everything they had on the ground, beautiful hot day. But everything they had out on display, everything I could have bought, everything was on the shop, just gauges, bloody controls, bloody all sorts of stuff, nuts and bolts, titanium nuts and bolts, everything. I could have bought the whole lot, but I couldn't afford to buy anything. So I'm looking at these engines right at the end of the day, and they're in 4 big steel cocoons. So they come in this, the core engine comes in this big cocoon, big steel cocoon. These 4 engines had the lids lifted up on them, and my friend from the Air Force, Neil, said, I'll send down 4 guys down to show you which engine to buy and show you the logs on the engines, which one you want. So the bottom line was these were listed, as I say, the 4 last listings of the day, and the Raffies told me the one you want is the second one in line, which is, for example, 357, number 357. So anyway, hot day, auctioneers getting pushed around on a big stand, the guys pushing him around, and anyway, got the first engine there, and the auctioneer says, he said, these are late entry. He said, I don't know what they are, some sort of engine. What sort of engine? Anyone want to open a bid on them? And I thought, well, I sat back and I thought, what's going on here? And anyway, so the guys climbed all over them. I don't know, junk guys or who they were, but people climbed all over these engines and looked up and thought, you haven't got a hope in hell of buying these. Anyway, so bidding started on them, and from memory, I can't remember what they went for, but I think they got to something like $4,000. And the auctioneer says, stuff it. He says, too late in the day. Too late in the day, he said, the cocoon's worth more than $4,000. And he went to the guy, he said to the guy, right, we're out of here. So he started getting pushed away. And it took a minute for the penny to drop. Mate, hey, mate, I got on an aeroplane at midnight last night to come across here and bid on one of these items. Because you're not happy with the four, you can't throw them all in. He said, which one do you want? I said, that's number 2 in line. He said, what did you bid for it? 500. Sold. Next one, 500. 500. I bought the 4 of them for $500 each.
Unbelievable.
But it gets back again to the desire. As I say, I've been chasing these things forever. The bottom line was, as soon as I got them off, where in God's name am I going to find $2,000? So I rang the missus up and said, sweetheart, can you put your good dress on and go out and see if we can get us $2,000? Anyway, bottom line was, everyone then wanted them. So it's 40 guys came to me and said, mate, that one there, you don't need that and whatever. And the good engine went back to Willietown. We put the afterburner on and we ran it, flew it back to Perth, and then we rolled it into the car. And one of the most amazing things to this day was we set the whole car up to take the engine mounts, the whole thing. We put the engine in the car just to line it all up. And obviously a jet engine or a rocket's got to have a 1 degree nose down, so it's actually pushing the nose down. We're trying to set that up and jig that up. We thought, what's going on here? We couldn't get the engine angle to go 1 degree. And then we looked at it, and then we found out the engine wasn't straight.
Oh.
So in other words, instead of being dead straight, it had a kick in the middle of it. And I rang up my contacts back at the Williamtown. I said, are these things bent? Do they have a bend in the middle of them? I said, no, they're not bent. They're straight. I said, well, there's something going on here. An engine can't be bent. It can't be bent. But I said, it's you put a straight edge on the front of the engine there, and put a straight edge on the back. It's like that. And I can't remember how many degrees, but I told them all the guts of it. So they had all the engineers go out and look at all the engines and stuff like that. But anyway, they come back to me about a week later and said, holy shit, these things are bent in the middle. So the junction section behind the turbine had a 30 mil shorter top in the junction section. Anyway, but no one even knew that. That's the thing that amazed me was that so we had to change a couple of bits on the remounting of the car. So obviously to get the arse end up a bit higher. But that was quite amazing. And but yeah, we did a lot of tricks to it. These engines have so many parts on them: gun dips, approach controls. They have different things on them. The crap we took off that engine, you would have weighed half the weight of the engine. It's just a big pile of stuff we take off the engine. Then one of the other things we did, we met one of the cleverest Mirage guys the RAF had at the time, Tony Wolf up in Darwin. Absolute trooper, absolute legend. And got Tony to come down and have a look at the engine. We said, mate, we really want to hot rod this thing. We got a standard. I thought they put out something like nearly 14,000 pound of thrust. But we said we want to get this up to 18,000 pound. He said, mate, well, I don't think you're going to be. So I said, well, what are our options? He said, well, obviously we tip a lot more fuel in the engine. We get the engine run a lot hotter. We put a lot more fuel in the afterburner. We can overspeed it. So we set the overspeed so it goes up revs higher. And you've taken the weight off it. And what else you've done? Plus we had a different pressurised fuel system that delivered maximum pressure on that fuel control. So anyway, we took it up to PSC Motion, shaded it down, and I think the best we got out of it was 17,000 something pound, but not bad, from 14,000 to 17,200, I think it was, pound. But that was a jet engine, mate, and now we're in the rocket business, so it's a bit trickier.
We'll talk about the rocket stuff in a second, but I just want to finish that chapter because it was such a special car with two things. Firstly, the numbers. The Australian record, which I think still stands, you'll tell me if I haven't got that right, 500 mile an hour, 802.6 Ks an hour. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Just amazing. What did that feel like? What does that sensation feel like, Rosco?
That's a good question. It really is for anyone in motoration would find this hard to appreciate. But what you're doing, Rusty, you're driving a car over the curves of the earth. So we're at a place called Lake Airna. So a huge big salt pan, absolutely amazing place if you ever get the opportunity to see it.
South Australia. It's about 400 k's northwest of the city of Adelaide, I think, isn't it? So yeah,
that's it. Yeah, out that way. And Iron Knob's the nearest town. They sort of come in on a dirt track for 100 kilometres. But anyway, but when you see it, it's just absolutely mind-boggling to come over a hill. It's hot, it's dusty, the bloody flies. And then where is this place? You pull over a hill and like, holy shit! You see 180 kilometres. Well, you can't see that far, but there's a 180 kilometre strip of white concrete. It's as hard as concrete, and it's bloody. That's awesome. Anyway, first time we went there, we were absolutely blown away. But
What's it feel like on your body and things like that, Roscoe, and controlling the machine at that sort of speed?
Well, the G, I think the maximum G I think we went on that was 3G, which to us, like drag racing, in the jets we go 5G, and when you put the two we had the cross-ply chutes. When we put the chutes out, we go -8. So in drag racing, we've done up the 3-inch belts, the big Simpson 3-inch bloody belts. You couldn't breathe them. You just done up that tight in them. And as soon as I popped those chutes, they'd stretch that much. I just about whacked my helmet on the steering wheel. And then they go back and it'd be normal again. Like, Jesus, you couldn't understand how these seat belts would do it. But bottom line is the dragster was quite a wild ride, and nothing compared with a rocket car or a top fuel car or anything like that. But it's got a pretty wild ride. But to get in, so the land speed car only would go probably 3G at the most. And but the big thing with driving the car is, so you're on this white player or you're on white salt lake with a black line put down it and a marker barrel every kilometre. So you had to know where you were on the track. There's no other way of knowing where you are. So a big number on the track, because obviously if you miss the finish line and you keep the power on, you'd end up in Woomera or somewhere. So yeah. But the thing is, you sit your bum in the car starts up, crew back away, take off, and I'm on comms with them all the way. But the bottom line is you're looking over the curvature earth. So when you run in the car, or when I'm sitting in the car, I can see 3 barrels, and I can just hit the top of the 5th one over, and you see the curved earth go that way, and you see it go that way. So it's like sitting on a ball. And then when you run the car, when you run it, and when I first started running, first few runs I do, I get out and think, holy shit, my neck hurts. And then we look at the onboard vision. I had a camera looking there, and lift my bum out the seat, and got my helmet pressed up hard against the top of the roll code, subconsciously trying to look over the hill just to make sure there's no emus, or even though you've got spotters, but no emus or kangaroos or something in the track. It's really like driving a road car over a hill pretty fast. No one's over the hill here type thing. And same scenario. So that's all the way. You're going over the curvature like that. And even the spectators, we say to people, it's not really a spectator sport. Channel 7 came out there with us on 3 different excursions where there's some brilliant vision around somewhere. I think it might be on a website or whatever, but they brought studio cameras out. They set things up. They got big platforms up. Some of the best vision that's ever been seen in the land speed business. But the amazing thing, even with those guys, was they'd set the cameras up at a predetermined spot, and they'd hear me on the radio. Okay, you got start clearance. Aussie invaders rolling. So I'd light the wick and be heading back southbound, for example. And the camera's looking over the horizon and say, well, where is he? Where is he? Where is he? No, I can't see him yet. And then someone say, oh, there's a plume on the horizon there. They just see a plume. Next thing it turns into a black dot. There's a bigger black dot. Next bigger, and then whoosh, next thing it's gone past. And then, holy shit! It's
that fast.
That's fast, yeah. So as I say, because of the curved earth, they can't see us. I'm down here running fast, and then they're here, sort of thing. And anyway.
I love the analogy of it being like over the top of a ball, mate. That's a great description. Hey, just before we move on to the current project, because I know that's a big mission and it's one that's consumed you for some time now. Can we complete, if you're comfortable with it, by talking about you went back and endeavoured to better that mark, to chase a new record in Invader 2, and in many ways, mate, am I right in saying that you're lucky to be here to tell the story today?
Oh, in my motor racing history, I've had a lot of thrills and spills, and this was I think the hardest thing for anyone looking in from the outside is when you're doing something without any money. And we went across there with our arse out of our pants. We had a camp there. We put it over the radio message. No one can come out. You can't use the dunny. We can't give you a drink of water. We can't do anything for you. Watch it on TV. If you come out and you tread on a broken bottle and you cut your foot, or a snake bites you, or you have a heart attack or something, and you take our team away, our medical team away, or a flying doctor, we're screwed. Stay at home and watch it on TV. Anyway, still lots of people came out, but bottom line was we ran it, and we actually ran that car. Let me get it right. We ran it to 528 mile an hour on that first run one way, and then came back the other way a bit slower. Bottom line was we couldn't afford to stay there a day longer, so we went. And that was possibly the biggest disappointment in my whole career. I believe we could have set a world land speed record on that trip, but we had a team. They were all volunteers. Their wives are back home. They're homesick. They want to get home. Had an engineer, a worldwide renowned engineer, John Ackroyd, came across to help us out. He was there, absolute legend. to help us out. But yeah, he had to get back to the UK, and his advice to the team was a very, very good guide. But we sat down and he said, I suggest we pack it up, we come back another day. And I remember looking at John with the tear in my eye and saying, John, we can't afford to come back another day, mate. We can't do it. The weather's here, the car's here. I believe the car's got it. We can't do it. Anyway, being a democracy, we all took a vote on it, and there's probably 3 guys said, let's stay and do it. And everyone else wanted to go. They said, we'll do it. We'll come back next year. Anyway, never got the weather again. The following year it rained. I think that was, I can't remember what it was. Anyway, following year it rained. The track was rained out. Next year was looking really bad weather-wise, and we went to all the trouble into setting up a village. We donated a set of van bodies. We set a whole village up at our RAF base up in Pierce. I think there's something like 14 of these vans, put windows in them, wired them up, did the whole thing, and trained them doing that. That was a mission itself. We took all these across to, with the help of a company called GKR Trucking here in Perth. We took these things across to Iron Knob and then brought them in 180 kilometres for the road trains, which we weren't allowed to do. But anyway, not the GKR side, but our side. We're over height, we're overweight, and we're over width. We've loaded all the stuff on, had a crane on there. I don't even know if I should say this, but we're driving up through the outer blocks and I'm pulling all the wires down with the forklift because I'm going through the place. We're that high. Mermaids chased us out in back of South Australia somewhere, and mate, we got off the track. Anyway, setting that up was absolutely awesome, but to do all that, Rusty, was people could not understand just how much effort went into doing that, and then to turn around and say, no, let's pack up and come back next year. So it was really 3 years before we could come back again, and by the time we'd done that, when we were ready to run the record, the Poms had gone the 763 mile an hour, where all we were out to break at that time was the Richard Noble record. He ran 633 mile an hour. Anyway, 633 mile an hour. So all we had to do is pick. So bottom line was we went out a bit later and went 638. We went 638 mile an hour on a one-way pass, but then pulled the pin and had to go back. Came back the third year later when the weather was right. Ran the car. Track was ratchet, it was soft, it was bloody, everything was wrong. Everything was against us. Huge effort to get there, as I say. No funding to pack up and say, let's come back again later. We had to do it. So I decided to run the car. We're having all sorts of problems with the car. We're getting bogged with all sorts of stuff was happening, running off course. I said, well, we've got to have a run. I've got to run it really fast on a southbound run and see how fast we can go. And the car, just so you understand how it happened, the front track of the car is narrow, a little bit narrower than the back. And what actually happened is the front wheels punched through the salt. And as I say, we approached 600 mile an hour on that run, but the wheels broke through the salt, a lot of downforce in front of the car, broke through the salt. Then one of the rear wheels dropped into that track and the car just tramlined. And I was looking at the timing gear, possibly 2 mile away. I thought, holy shit, this don't look too flash. I couldn't put a chute out at that stage because it just would have torn off the car. So I just had to wait for the airspeed to slow us down, and things get closer and closer on the chin. Here we go. Bang, hit the chute, it held, hit the other chute, and then ran over the timing gear and destroyed that car. And the noise it made, I thought I was dead. It just made a hell of a bang. There's a really neat vision of it somewhere. I think it's on their website also, again, where we ingested a timing marker, went through the engine, killed this engine, big black plume out the back of the engine, and the noise it made when it hit, it's just absolutely mind-boggling. I got out of the car and shit, I'm still alive, which I couldn't believe. But I walked around the front of the car and I was absolutely amazed. We laid this one-piece composite body up of the car that had never been done before for a land speed car, to my knowledge. And anyway, well, I just expect to see this thing a million bits. I went around there, we had a bit of a crack on one side, where it punched one side in, but it come out again. It's just the memory it brought it out again, and engine was destroyed. But yeah, it was a really good car. But anyway.
That's the end of part 1 of my podcast with land speed record legend Rosco McGlashan. Make sure you head back to the library and check out part 2, where we focus on his latest project, the mind-blowingly fast Aussie Invader 5R. What Rosco needs for the mission, when it might happen, and where in the world he could possibly run this rocket-powered car.
Listener.